Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you my review of the Humble Choice Bundle for May 2024. Another month and another Humble Choice Bundle. At a glance, I hadn't actually heard of most of these, but I was happy to find several good ones in the mix. Let me know what you think of this month's bundle in the comments below. Be sure to check the timestamps for specific games, and stay tuned for my final thoughts in the end. Okay, let's get to the review. Starting off the bundle is Mediterranea Inferno, which is a visual novel about three friends getting together after the pandemic restrictions lifted. Well, right away I was reminded of a visual novel called The Milky Way Prince we received years back in Humble Choice, which actually was the first Humble Choice I ever did on the old channel. Link in the description if you're curious. And, well, it's because it's the same creator. Although, his art was what stood out to me the most, so I guess his style is memorable. I'm not really a fan of it though. However, this time I think the developers did a good job showcasing the art cinematically. Things constantly felt moving, and I liked the change of locations this time around compared to what I vaguely remembered from their past game. This time around, I still wasn't a fan of their chosen subject matter. Personally, despite the characters trying to find themselves and battle with their own issues, I couldn't help but feel all of them were completely obnoxious and unlikable, which for me doesn't sell a story very well. Then the story itself isn't really my cup of tea. I guess I've never really liked these kinds of stories that deal with things too close to home, as I like my media to be more escapist. And yeah, I'm just not a target audience for most visual novels, so obviously take what I say with a grain of salt. If you think it looks interesting, then give it a try, but I will be coming back to this one myself. Amanda the Adventurer is a horror game that follows the trend of taking something rather innocent, in this case a children's cartoon, and turning it into something malevolent. You play as Riley, who is exploring her aunt's attic and comes across a tape of an old animated children's cartoon. Think Dora the Explorer, but really unsettling. As you watch the tapes, you're presented with a puzzle, with the tape being a key to solving it. You repeat this and interact directly with Amanda in the videos. She becomes increasingly disturbing as you progress until you reach the end. But it's not really the end, as if you want to complete the game, then you'll need to replay it with new information you've gathered. Then it starts adopting escape room elements with slightly more difficult puzzles to find more tapes and unlock different endings. I actually finished this game, but I'll admit I did break down and use a guide after my first hour with it. It took me 2 hours in total, so obviously expect a bit longer if you're trying to figure it out on your own. I just wanted to see everything quickly since I knew the game wasn't that long. So that being said, it did keep me invested in it enough to want to keep playing. I'm not really into puzzles in games though. I don't mind a bit of thinking about puzzles, but at the same time, if I get stumped on it for too long, then I usually go to a guide. As far as the horror aspect of this game goes, I'd say it wasn't really that scary. The atmosphere is unnerving, but that's about it. Although, I actually like horror games like this. Over-reliance on jump scares can get old quickly, so it's always nice when a game tries something else from time to time. Since I did complete the game, well, I won't be coming back to it, but I'd recommend giving it a try if you thought it looked interesting. Following up is Bravery and Greed, a roguelite action platformer. You take the role of one of several classes and adventure through various stages with randomized layouts. Obviously, platformer roguelites are something we've seen before, but Bravery and Greed also brings satisfying beat-em-up style combat. I played 2 of the 4 classes, being the Rogue and the Amazon. Both of them brought a different playstyle to the table and felt good to play. The combat here reminded me a lot of playing Super Smash Bros. Simple and easy to understand controls, but obvious depth to the combat. Despite button mashing at times, I definitely think that better positioning and using attack variety is still important in this game. The rest of the roguelite elements come together here as well. Randomized layouts for the stages as mentioned, along with the variety of items to pick up and perks to gain that modify each run. At the end of a run, the game tallies up the gold you picked up along the way, and these unlock cards for you to use at the start of a run to augment the difficulty in exchange for additional benefits. Furthermore, this game has a few different modes. I played Adventure Mode, which is the default, but there's also a Horde Mode and PvP, which sounds fairly self-explanatory. And yes, there is multiplayer here, which I think is great. I didn't get to play multiplayer during my hour, but I'm looking forward to coming back to this and give it another go. Next up we have, oh boy, King of the Castle. I don't want to sound like I'm bashing their game, but their multiplayer requirement was probably the single most issue that put the nail in the coffin. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself though. So first, let me point out that all the footage you see on screen comes from their trailers because I couldn't actually play the game. I wasn't too keen on trying to find a game to play with a bunch of random people, and trying to coordinate a time that worked for people I do know in such a short time window for the review was basically impossible. And when I mean I wasn't keen on trying to find a game to play, I meant literally trying to find people via Discord, forums, smoke signals, etc., because this game doesn't have any matchmaking. And once again, I'm getting into a rant. Anyway, the premise of this party game is a player plays as a monarch, and others that join are nobles of their court. The nobility are more or less trying to plot the monarch's demise and install someone else in power, probably themselves or some sort of puppet they control. They do this mainly through voting on different prompts that come up throughout a match. The cool thing about the game is that only one person needs to own it, and others can join via their internet browser of choice. However, you need at least 3 other people, so a total of 4, up to a maximum of 25 total players. And that sounds kinda crazy, right? Because who seriously has that many friends? Well, the other way to play this game is with Twitch chat. So your favorite streamer could be playing a game and you could join in. Which again, that's nice. Sorta. I'm not really into the streaming scene as a creator or as a consumer, and I can't help but feel that this was the developer's whole marketing shtick. Hopefully take off with the streamers and hit massive popularity like Among Us or something. And to stop myself from ranting anymore, I think the game could be fun, but you definitely will need to consult others for an opinion if you want to try it out, if the multiplayer aspect didn't already turn you off. In a similar vein to the Gunk, given to us several months back, Loddlenaut has players cleaning up an alien world. You're tasked with cleanup on planet Gup-14 for a client known as Guppy. And they must have had the biggest going away party before leaving the planet because there's trash all over the place. Players dive around underwater and collect all this trash to then recycle it into useful material that can be used to help their cleanup efforts, such as better oxygen tanks or items to help clear away polluted goop. As you clean up the environment, plants start coming back to life, and you come across cute little critters known as Loddles. These guys apparently change based on the food you feed them, and can lay eggs to repopulate the waters. As far as I could tell, they're in the game just to be cute, and for the players to have something to interact with. Actually, this whole game is fairly laid back and would be squarely placed in the cozy genre if you haven't already guessed. The gameplay is really simple, and the graphics are charming, although for those who don't like the pixelated look, there's an option to turn that off. I like this game a lot though. It's a nice game to relax to, and only is about 4 hours in total, so it's not trying to take up too much of your time. Next up is Spider's attempt at a Souls-like with Steelrising. You play as an automaton working for Marie Antoinette during the alternative history of the French Revolution. The rabble are rioting, and apparently there are clockwork robots everywhere that want to kill you. It's an interesting setting, and I definitely like that aspect of the game. I think the game does falter a bit with the combat. Obviously there was a certain amount of learning the timing and reach of my weapon, which were these really cool fan blades that could turn into a shield. But everything did feel slightly off. Combat felt a bit clunky with animations and their timings, and I'm not the biggest fan of your character's movement, especially her normal run speed, which feels like she's trying to run while underwater. A part of me wasn't sure if the reason why some of these things felt the way they did is because she's an automaton, so the character is supposed to feel stiff. That said, as I continued playing, I found myself getting into rhythm and really enjoying myself. It's no Elden Ring or Dark Souls, but I think those would be unfair comparisons given the level of experience From Software now has with creating titles in this genre. Spider seems to have done a fair job and definitely has me interested in continuing to play and see how my thoughts on it develop. In the penultimate spot, we have Hi-Fi Rush, an action rhythm game with a lot of personality. Right away, the excellently presented comic book-like art pops with bright colors and an inviting world design. It felt like I was watching a cartoon a lot of the time, and my daughter had even asked me what I was watching. The The game follows a young man named Chai who wanted to get some sort of robotic augmentation to replace his presumably unusable arm, and then go on to achieve his rock star dreams. However, things didn't go according to plan, and now he needs to break out of this robotic facility before they apprehend him for his supposed defect. Combat here plays to the beat of a rhythm game, literally. While each attack doesn't necessarily need to be timed to the beat, you do more damage and get more points for doing so. I find most games like this very hard for me. I'm not sure if I'm musically deaf or if I just need more practice, but trying to keep the beat was pretty challenging. However, the game does do a good job teaching you the new mechanics that add to your combos, and it offers other ways to help musically challenged players like myself. Every attack lands on a beat no matter what, but if you time it perfectly, then that's when you get the bonus. Furthermore, they have an optional beat meter you can show on your HUD to help. But I still don't know how well that actually helped me. Despite all that, I still enjoyed my time with the game, and I do want to come back to finish it. This is definitely something that was an experimental breath of fresh air coming from the AAA space, and it's such a pity that Microsoft shuttered Tango Gameworks. It really sucks that we more than likely won't see a sequel for this, or get to play any more games in their other franchises like The Evil Within or Ghostwire Tokyo. Lastly, we have Yakuza Like a Dragon, headlining the month, continuing the Yakuza franchise as its 7th title? I'm really not sure about the chronology of the Yakuza franchise, but needless to say, it's an entry in a long-running series. Here we follow Ichiban Kasuga, and really I have no idea what the story is yet. In my time with the game, Kasuga was trying to gather debt money from other people for his Yakuza family, but not actually doing that because he has too much of a soft spot for people. Despite having very little experience with previous games, I can say that I didn't feel like I needed to have played them in order to follow what was happening. In the opening, there seemed to be some backstory for a different character, who maybe was in previous games, but again, I didn't feel like I didn't understand what was going on. And as always is the case when I get a Yakuza game in Humble, most of my time spent is actually just watching a lot of cutscenes. Actually, I think you could probably take what I said about the last couple of Yakuza titles we received, and almost repeat back word for word what I think about this one, besides the different story elements. Basically, you explore a small section of Yokohama, which differs from past games being set in the fictional Tokyo district of Kamurocho. And it's a good recreation of a modern Japanese city. It feels pretty close to going outside and walking around big city areas where I live in Kyoto. Actually, I was really surprised to see Ringer Hut, which is a great place to get champon, and not some look-alike that most games do. Anyway, probably the biggest departure with this game from past Yakuza titles is the change with the combat system, from a real-time action game to a turn-based one. I thought it was still fun though, but I don't have years of time spent with these games, so I guess I don't have a preference. And actually, the combat was more of a blend between turn-based and action, with it incorporating time button presses for blocking, or QTEs when using special attacks. As always, I'm really interested in playing through these games. I just haven't done it yet, which honestly is a shame. I need to get on this. Okay, let's wrap this up and see if this bundle is worth it or not. I based my rating solely on whether I thought the game was worth playing on about an hour or so of hands-on gameplay. Also, I'd be grateful if you could please give the video a like if you're enjoying it, because that really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm gods. Overall, this was an okay month. I felt the month overall was weaker than previous ones when thinking about it purely from my own perspective and gaming taste. However, this was bound to happen in a bundle where there are always going to be a wide variety of genres thrown into each one. I'm still happy with most of what we got and eager to play many of these again. Now let's get into the recommendations. Starting at the top with the must-plays is Bravery and Greed. This may be a surprise to some, as it definitely was a surprise for me. Bravery and Greed was really a hidden gem in this bundle, and I greatly enjoyed my time with it. I really hope I could find some time to play this one again with my wife. Following up with the strong recommendations was a good amount with Yakuza Like a Dragon, Hi-Fi Rush, Steelrising, and Loddlenaut. I always like my time with the Yakuza games, and as I mentioned earlier, I really need to set aside some time to start playing this franchise. Hi-Fi Rush was another gem in the bundle that I knew of, but didn't know much about. I'm glad to finally be able to play this rhythm game, but also sad and disappointed that Tango Gameworks was forcibly cut short. I'm sure there are more than a few out there that won't agree with my placement of Steelrising, but I really liked my time with the game despite its clunkiness. I think there's something here that makes the game worth playing, and I'm betting spiders will only get better if they attempt another Souls-like title. And finally, Loddlenaut was such a cute and chill adventure game. While the gameplay is simple, it seemed like the perfect cozy game experience. This one I'll probably actually sit down with my daughter to play, as I'm sure she'll find the game charming and the Loddles adorable. In my week recommendations, I placed Amanda the Adventurer. The escape room-like puzzles, or puzzles in general, aren't really my thing, but I think the idea for the horror was great and thought the execution of the game was done fairly well. Apparently there was a sequel recently announced for those interested. In the Don't Bother With section is Mediterranea Inferno and King of the Castle. From a slightly more objective view, I'd say that Mediterranea Inferno is a vast improvement over Milky Way Prince and does a much better job executing a story. But it's still not something I'm into, and I personally don't know anyone who'd be interested in it. King of the Castle got placed here for the obvious multiplayer requirement, but also, I don't really think I'm a fan of these voting kinds of games with silly humor. Maybe I'm just not wired right, but I've never really been a fan of games like Apples to Apples or Cards Against Humanity, and yes, I know this isn't exactly the same thing. And yes, I know I wasn't able to try the game out myself, so take what I say with a grain of salt. Maybe I'll try to play this when the stars align, but I kinda doubt it. And that wraps up my thoughts on this month's bundle. Do you agree with my thoughts? What games, if any, are you looking forward to playing? Let me know what your thoughts are, or if there are any different recommendations you'd make in the comments below. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.